find something that is a ideally physical item or bundle of item that represents your property or your brand well, and offer it to your guests. You'd be surprised, like depending on your RevPAR, if a guest is spending $1,000 for 3-4 nights to stay with you, they're not going to balk at spending $50 or $100 for a welcome package that they're going to be able to use to surprise their family, to surprise their loved one, etc. The other one, and I think that's going to be a lot for like European customers who are maybe not as familiar with it, is like the damage waivers. I think this one is one that, and specifically I would say like self-insured damage waiver. It becomes maybe not obvious because there's an idea of risk behind it, but it actually ends up always 100% of the time as an obvious decision to offer a self-insured waiver. In other words, a fee that guests can decide to pay, and with which you're clearly communicating if you're paying this fee instead of a deposit, or the fee could be also entirely optional. I'm not going to hold it against you if there's small damage up to a certain limit.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Welcome back to another episode of the RevLabs podcast. The RevLabs podcast is about revenue management, how you can increase the revenues of your company. And we are, as always, down to earth, talking about topics that you encounter every day, or talking with people who can solve things maybe in different ways that you usually do. And speaking of which, today I'm with Simon Seroussi. Simon is the co-founder, CEO of SuiteOp. So we'll be talking about what they do. We'll be talking about many topics on how to increase revenue through different angles. We'll talk about upselling, the quality of your listings. We'll be talking about Airbnb as well. Without further ado, Simon, hello, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Thibault. I'm excited to be here today.
Great to have you. I was joking a bit because before we started the call, should I call you Simon or Simon? So maybe what's your background? Tell us more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you hinted, I'm French. I haven't worked really to hide my French accent, but I think I hide it more than some of my compatriot colleagues. But I grew up in France and moved to the US, actually moved to China really when I was 18 years old. First to study, continued that in the United States. And my first job out of school was actually at a travel technology company called TravelClick. So started in the industry back in sort of 2016, and worked there for a few years, realized that my passion as a traveler did translate as well in my passion in building great software for travelers and operators. And that's where sort of things began.
And you have this of course, this tech side of yourself, but you also have not just the tech side, but the operational side of running a short-term rental business, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as I was working on the software side of things, I started, being very embedded in the news and what was happening. And there was this back then small, medium-sized company, Airbnb, that I was already familiar with. I was a pretty early Airbnb host. I started hosting in New York, I want to say as early as 2013. And I think back then Airbnb was maybe generating $30 to $50 million. So a good company in any reasonable terms, but far from the behemoth it's become today. And as I initially hosted out of a need, I think as many others have started. When I went back home to visit my family and friends, it was always really painful to leave an expensive studio apartment empty in New York City. So I would do it over the weekends. I would do it over a week-long vacation. And that really uncovered what I thought was a great opportunity. Is as I hosted in my own place, I realized that by making subtle changes to the guest experience and actually investing in it, and I would be able to raise my rates even then. I did not know of revenue management at all. Really, that wasn't what I was focused on. I was mostly focused on reservations product when I worked at TravelClick and guest experience. But what I quickly realized then is by enabling the guests to truly feel like they're a local while they're traveling, you're building a real differentiator with a hotel that keeps guests more often than not in this sort of tourist mindset. And we decided with my co-founder Jean-Manuel at SuiteOp today to create a first company, SoSuite, which is a short-term rental brand based in Philadelphia. And we grew it in a strong, I think, local urban operator with close to 400 units under management. And that sort of scaled very organically throughout the years, and that's how we really got our teeth deep from software into ops.
Yeah, software ops and scaling, right? Obviously, that's also I would say the third pillar that you bring to in this experience. When you created SuiteOp, was it because it was a need for you as you were scaling to create your own solution? And what are the pains there? Or same thing when you talk maybe to some customers you have with SuiteOp, what are the biggest pains you see with let's say scaling businesses and pains that you can solve?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we started, so SuiteOp, funnily enough, was not the first piece of technology that we built in-house. The first thing we did was actually a custom booking engine. And it's because as operators, we realized, we're giving away an important part of our revenue to OTAs. And while they're a crucial part of our merchandising strategy, we're big enough that we should start thinking about building a brand and building a presence, especially because of how localized we were. And we could get recurring, business for people that came to Philadelphia frequently. So the first thing we did was a custom booking engine. We built it back then, using our PMS's API, and we even built, I think, one of the first loyalty programs for the STR industry, full custom loyalty program where people would accumulate nights as they stayed. And then I think that this first experience for us removed a lot of the I think concerns of building your own tech. It's always sounds like a bit of a daunting task. And so we're like, okay, well, we did this, that worked. Let's look at the rest of our stack. And it had always been really frustrating to us how hyper fragmented things had become. When you're a scaling operator, the more you grow, the more you want best of class. And you need best of class software team members because you're not a sort of solo founder anymore. You can't have your hands everywhere, and so your eyes can be everywhere either. And so you need software to help you improve things. And so as you add best of class software and as you scale, we quickly realized that we were using over a dozen software. And best in class, I think, is a great approach, and it's important to add softwares that answer particular frustrations that are really important to you as an operator. But in our case, it came to a point where we realized one particular problem is that our guest experience tools in general and our operations tools were living in different places. And that just made no sense to us. Like philosophically, even the fact that like a team member on the ground completed a task but wasn't intrinsically connected in their day-to-day to the guest experience teams that spoke to guests or to the guests themselves felt wrong. It felt like we were creating a silo unnecessarily. And so SuiteOp came out of that desire to bring together ops and guest experience in one place, and what we ended up calling guest operations. And that's how the software sort of progressively came to be.
So when you look today at the suite tool that SuiteOp offers, when you think about the core of the topic of this podcast, which is increasing revenues, basically, what is it what kind of solutions do you bring about for people who, let's say, want to get more revenue out of a stay besides just increasing nighty prices?
Yeah, great question. So I think first, there's something to be said about not just generating more revenue, but also how you facilitate it, right? And that's really what's core to us. We try to find ways in which we can help operators generate more revenue through upsells, damage waivers, improved reputation as well, which in turn will help you, yield more on your dynamic pricing side. And we help them do this in a way that's as seamless for the guests. That's always an important thing. You don't want to create too much friction through the guest experience, and as automated and insightful for the operator. And what I mean by that is we don't want people to have to build everything manually. We want to give them a solid base and for them to be able to build on top of that. So when you create your SuiteOp account, you have best practice upsells already built in. You have a lot of pre-check-in rules that are source-based, ranging from damage waivers to others that are going to help you generate more revenue. And then it's up to you as an operator to then decide what's going to work for you and adjust it accordingly.
Yeah, for people who are not in the US or North America, damage waiver may be a topic people hear a lot about, and couldn't cover that. But in the US, the idea of like, oh, I'm going to increase, let's say, how much money I'm getting out of a stay through upselling services or damage waiver is something is not new as a concept, but still a lot of people actually don't do that. But how are you solving this in a new way or in a different way from people are doing by themselves or maybe using other solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So by the way, on the damage waiver side, it's definitely an interesting trend. I'm definitely noticing that while it's not as present in Europe, folks are starting to understand the concept and see the value in it more and more. Quite organically, and some of our largest European customers are now using it. But to talk a bit about upsells, there's a couple of ways in which we help operators truly optimize their upsells. The first and perhaps the most important thing in SuiteOp is that the upsells are shown early. As soon as a guest books, somebody can book an early check-in, can request particular meat-stay cleans, etc. I think a lot of the guest experience solutions out there follow a very linear flow, where a guest arrives on a portal, on a link, has to complete a series of steps in order to access any sort of tangible value. With SuiteOp, that value is instant. You book, why wouldn't you want your guests to be able to start spending more with you? They're in that mindset. They just booked. That's the right time. And I think timing is really crucial about when you're upselling. So we start there. We then continue with visibility rules, where some upsells should be displayed at the right time to the right guest. Not all upsells are worth showing. I think something that we've noticed quite early is the more upsell you show, the more your highest converting upsells may actually lose in conversion. So you want to make sure your merchandising has strong visibility rules there. Something else that we focus on is going to be around payment flows. You mentioned Airbnb earlier. We want to make sure that any upsell payment flow enables operators to stay compliant with the platforms that they operate on. So if you are upselling an early check-in on Airbnb, a guest has the option there to pay through the resolution center, and they'll be deep linked there with everything pre-filled, and they'll be able to pay in a click, which makes the process a lot easier, because we all know that Airbnb's resolution center is one of the most used feature, but it's also one of the most challenging one to use at scale. And so we try and make that a lot easier for operators too. I think the last point I'll mention is the ability to, servicing the upsell is one thing, offering it is one thing, servicing is another. The third one is going to be accurately measuring it and measuring your success and being able to trace it back to bookings. So we have an entire analytics suite in which we allow you to understand which upsells are getting the most clicks, which ones are getting the most conversions, when are your portals getting opened by your guests, and what can you do to improve that flow? Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to the price of your upsell and the timing of those upsell. In many ways, similar to how dynamic pricing works, you're going to price differently at different times of the year, of the month, of the week, depending on demand and depending on the actual item you're selling.
I remember back a few months ago when Airbnb rolled out their, I'm going to say completely new terms, but they say updated terms, to put it this way.
Sure. Yeah.
That was supposed to be more precise, but actually created a lot of confusion. You were very, I really liked the way you try to bring clarity on LinkedIn? You had very clear posts like, hey, let me check. I talk with Airbnb. That's how to do it. But so once again, right? So because I still have the feeling that some people may think that, oh, now I cannot offer upsells directly, or I cannot put any link in a conversation, or I can't get people to download an app, or I can't send them to a portal. So you just explain how you do this, but again, can you paint again the picture, like what is doable, what is not doable anymore, and how people can navigate through this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with one, I think, thing that may not be as clear cut, but I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, like Airbnb, while they use AI for their support, while they're a highly optimized company with strong processes, they're still a company run by humans, and that means that any rule that they share is going to be followed to a certain extent. But there's still a human aspect behind it. They understand that things can't change overnight, and they also understand that things won't work 100% of the time. And so, with that being said, I think the first thing to note about Airbnb's changes is they first, on the link side, they don't prevent things from being shared. What Airbnb is really trying to do is obviously encourage people to build as much on their platform. So I think coming back to that and taking a step back is, why is Airbnb doing this? There's 2-3 reasons. The first one is they're trying to make the platform as sticky as possible. It's in their benefit to do this, and so they're going to build as much functionality there for pre-check-in, for guidebooks, etc. So that's why they're not discouraging links, but they're clearly saying you cannot tell your guests, hey, if you don't click on this link, you'll never be able to check in. You have to offer alternatives in the event that the guest does not want to use a link that you share. So you should be able to share some details by messaging or in other methods as well. The second thing that they're saying, the reason they're doing this is because they're trying to avoid leakage of bookings, right? They don't want people to communicate on the platform and then take a booking outside of it. It's one thing to have a guest book and then organically know your brand now and then book direct. Airbnb can't do anything about this, and they're not trying to really. That's why they're building this stickiness, because they're thinking, hey, we're going to build the best platform so people want to book with us again. So the reason that's one of the other reasons why they're sort of adding a bit of control. And then the third thing is they're obviously they launched Airbnb experiences. They're trying to push this as well, and so they want to be able to have a level of control over these. So I think on the link sharing, that's quite clear. On the fees, Airbnb clearly differentiates mandatory and optional fees. For mandatory fees, they're basically saying whenever you can, capture those at booking. So if you're capturing pet fees, full fees, etc., that can be added to Airbnb as part of your pricing, add it there, have the guest pay for it then. Obviously, they understand that it can't happen 100% of the time. That's why there's a rules center, and they're also not going to balk at you if you capture a pet fee outside of the platform once in a while. And then there's going to be optional fees, right? Things that are going to be like early check-ins, late checkouts, things that do not rely on the guest, that are not required for the guest to be able to successfully actually arrive and consume the stay. And for these, Airbnb is basically saying to complete those in the resolution center. However, they are sort of still leaving a bit of I think, open space here by saying that things like parking and things like led by third parties can be done outside of the platform. They're not expecting you to collect a parking fee and then have to pay a parking operator separately, for example. So a lot of these experiences in which you can get a commission out of them, etc., can still be sold, in other words, outside of the platform. And I haven't seen, we process millions of reservations every month, and I haven't seen a use case of a host getting into significant trouble for breaching one of these rules. Typically, the worst that can happen is Airbnb will send you a message, you'll clarify it, and then things will move on.
Last but one question for you is, and thanks for clarifying all this, by the way, in a very clear way. And also talk about fees. I think it's exactly that was the missing bit here. It's like, what do I do with my fees? I can't charge fees. I can't add options. And very, very clear. My last but one question is more about having worked with other operators, because you work with scaling operators. I don't know. Can you share maybe one source of revenue that you discovered people were using that was either surprising, or have one that's like, oh, every time you tell people you should do this and this is a winner? And like, is there a source of, I don't know, like a gem or something unknown that people have, or something that works people don't think about that we could mention today that we like, hey, an eye opener to people?
Yeah, there. I mean, I'll mention two. That's okay. I'm cheating a bit on the question there. The first one is find something that is a ideally physical item or bundle of item that represents your property or your brand well, and offer it to your guests. You'd be surprised. Like depending on your RevPAR, if a guest is spending $1,000 for 3-4 nights to stay with you, they're not going to balk at spending $50 or $100 for a welcome package that they're going to be able to use to surprise their family, to surprise their loved one, etc. A lot of people are sort of worried about this because they think that there's a heavy operational lift, but it doesn't actually have to be, especially as you reach a specific scale. Those are things that can be quite easy to do, and I would encourage everybody to actually experiment with those. They can quickly add a decent amount of margin. The other one, and I think that's going to be a lot for like European customers who are maybe not as familiar with it, is like the damage waivers. I think this one is one that, and specifically, I would say like self-insured damage waivers. Once you've grown accustomed to your guests and have conducted business for a while and have sort of scaled, you have a good sense data-wise of how much damages are actually occurring in the homes that you're operating, and what type of guests are causing those damages as well. And so it becomes, maybe not obvious because there's an idea of risk behind it, but it actually ends up always 100% of the time as an obvious decision to offer a self-insured waiver. In other words, a fee that guests can decide to pay, and with which you're clearly communicating if you're paying this fee instead of a deposit, or the fee could be also entirely optional. I'm not going to hold it against you if there's small damage up to a certain limit, and it's up to you to define that limit. That's something that I've seen be successful 100% of the time for customers of ours, and you have no idea how many customers thought, raised an eyebrow when we raised and said, I don't think this is for me. We encouraged and pushed them to try it, and then ultimately this became an extremely successful strategy that added as much as 5 to 10% to their company's EBITDA.
Simon, thanks for the clarity and the advice you brought today. So my last question is, if people want to get a hold of you, get in touch with you or with SuiteOp, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so I mean, first, feel free to email me directly at any point, simon@suiteop.com. If you'd like a more personalized demo, we're always happy to take the time. Go to the website, suiteop.com, register for a free demo, schedule the best time that works for you, and we'd love to show you the platform in as much detail as you'd like to learn.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again for your time today. I learned a few things, so and I look forward to seeing you maybe at one of the upcoming events.
Thank you so much, Thibault. Really appreciate it.